So we are, no, and there is some wording that says in order to have cooperative in your name, you have to have clearly identified cooperative principles or something in your articles of organization or an operating agreement. I was wondering about like some of these things, like if the whole like convincing the IRS, like you're saying, the 3 things you need to demonstrate, or the 3 rules they have, if that applies only to people who are incorporated as a co-op specifically, or if it would apply to people who are also in name a cooperative but
yes, you can be treated like as a cooperative under subchapter T, even if you didn't incorporate under a cooperative statute.
Yeah.
I mean, incorporating under a cooperative statute is a good thing because it just sort of makes that easier and more obvious and creates fewer red flags. But particularly if you're in a jurisdiction like Rhode Island that doesn't have a good co-op statute, I think you are better advised. I mean, you could incorporate in some other state as a co-op.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a good idea, and I'll tell you why I didn't think it's a good idea. I didn't say it before, but I'll say it now. You want to raise money, right? Raise capital, and if you incorporate in a different state than the one that you do business with, then any capital raising you do is interstate. And what you really want to avoid is ever having to have anything to do with the Federal Securities and Exchange Commission. You want to do all of your capital raising, if you can, within the 4 corners of your state, Rhode Island. Because then the worst that can happen to you is you have to register with the state securities regulator. And that is going to be way easier than having to register with the securities, with the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission.
Isn't there some tax exemption if you are working interstate? If you do most of your business in another state?
Well, I'm not talking about taxes.
Sales
I'm
tax.
talking about
Sales tax.
securities.
Yeah, it's a separate question.
This is securities. This is all about going out and asking people to give you money to invest in your business.
Yeah.
And you can do that by creating 2 classes of shares. You can have non-member shareholders in your co-op if they're Class B shares, but if you do that and start selling them all over the country, you're running the risk of having to register with the SEC, and you don't want to do that because it's an expensive hassle. So the bottom line is, yes, to answer your question, yes, you can still qualify under subchapter T even if you're an LLC.
Okay.
You just have to put the right stuff in your operating agreement.
Yeah.
Y el grupo, el panel de Providence, si tienen pregunta, levanten la mano o solamente hablar y podemos traducir también si quieren.
The other thing you should do.
We have a question.
We have a question.
Okay.
So could you tell us some of the benefits and disadvantages of participating in a cooperative that's in a different state?
By different state, you mean, I'm not sure what you mean by different state.
So we are located in Rhode Island. We live in Rhode Island, and we work in Rhode Island. But we're going to be participating in a cooperative that is based out of Massachusetts. Do you know about any benefits and disadvantages of that?
You mean you're going to be members of a cooperative in Massachusetts?
Yes.
So it makes life a little more complicated because then your co-op has members in 2 different states, and so there is the risk, I suppose, that first of all, you have to comply with the laws of both states, and you might, depending on how you raise money, you could have to register with the federal securities regulator. But other than that, I don't think there are any disadvantages. If it's just a straight up, is it okay for me to become a member of a worker co-op in Massachusetts when I'm going to be working in Rhode Island, I think it's fine. I don't think there's any disadvantages. That was a good answer, wasn't it? It's always great when you can tell people it's okay.
I had a pretty general question. How much of this do you think groups should do without legal advice? And then at what point do you think these co-ops should go and get a lawyer? And of course, we'll take your answer with a grain of salt since you are a lawyer. but for example, we have all these template bylaws. We could scour over those for a year and at what point should we say, okay, this is a good time to employ a lawyer and get it done?
That's a hard question to answer, because from the standpoint of your lawyer, getting with the lawyer early on is a good idea, because what I can do for my clients is I have all of my templates and ideas right on my computer. So rather than you guys messing around with your bylaws template for a year or 6 months or however much time you spend on it, I can just give you my template and say, look, read my template and change what you think you need to change because of the way you want to be, and then we'll just go from there. That's efficient from the lawyer standpoint. But there's an alternative strategy that would say, look, we're going to do as much of this as we can on our own because we want to be empowered, educated, savvy people, and we want to know as much as we can rather than just sort of depending on our lawyer's knowledge. And then on that theory, you get it all together, and then you just kind of, at the end, you just have a lawyer look it over and make sure that it's all cool and okay. And that's another way of doing it. That's an okay way to do it, I think.
How much do you charge?
Me? Personally?
How much